friends, Rabbi Esther here from a small sanctuary, and I just want to give you a little bit of a mid-Shabbat update for my Vegan Shevat. I have a lot of video footage for you about my recent meals and experiments, and I just want to talk you through a little bit what's been going on for me and how this experience has been for me. So as some of you know, if you have watched this channel before, I am doing a Vegan Shevat, which is my Jewish answer to Veganuary, the month of January where people go vegan for a month. I am a kosher flexitarian who relies quite heavily on a lacto-ovo-vegetarian diet with the occasional fish and meat put in, but overall I heavily rely on dairy and eggs to get me through life. So stepping away from that for a month has been really interesting. And I like to joke that my kashrut now has kashrut. My kosher is keeping kosher. So what does that mean? I had over the years gotten very comfortable with my groove of my practice of the Jewish dietary laws. And I've talked about that in another video, which I will make sure to leave a link to as well down below. But I felt it was time for a little bit of a spiritual and moral refresher. So I decided to go vegan and explore the parameters under which I would be vegan and see if I could get new skills in cooking, branch out culinarily, branch out spiritually and morally, test my resolve and what have you. And it certainly has been an interesting experience. Some of my observations so far. 1, I actually don't miss meat that much. The time where I miss it most is when my family is having chicken at the Shabbat dinner table. So side note, my family is not doing this challenge. They didn't want to, and I don't think it is medically responsible for me to have children engage in a vegan challenge. So just to clarify that. But apart from chicken at the dinner table on Shabbat, I don't really miss the meat, and I only miss it because I smell it and I see it. But the urges have been pretty manageable. I've eaten a lot of plant-based protein, and that's kept me full and happy, and I think that helps. Another observation is that prep and investment is everything, right? I went into this very ambitious, meal planning my way through it, but then life happened, work happened, and I went into it less prepared than I wanted to. And in those first 2 weeks, that was really hard because I basically became vegan on whatever I had in the fridge and the pantry, and it wasn't quite up to scratch. In this second week, we actually took a trip down to our local supermarket that is well stocked in vegan items and whole foods items, and I got a lot more interesting stuff. It cost me an arm and a leg. Money-wise, I feel like I had to remortgage my house just to afford some of that stuff. And as a side note, you know, there is a justice and equity angle to veganism and how we keep vegan and what kind of products we rely on. But I feel like that is a much different conversation and one I'm not particularly well versed in. But I invested in, you know, some vegan meats and some vegan cheeses, and the cheeses in particular are really quite costly. I served the cheeses with our Tu Bishvat Seder, which was also really great, and I'll show you some footage and talk you through what we did for Tu Bishvat as well in a little bit. And the cheeses were surprisingly good. So this was our Tu Bishvat Seder. We kept things really simple. I made a coconut butternut squash soup, set out loads of fresh fruits and vegetables, and printed off 2 Haggadah, one short one through Neochasid, which was linked on the PJ Library website, and one from Hazon, which was a more in-depth Haggadah. The Neochasid one was great for kids. Here you can see my spread. I had cream cheese, I had cheddar and the cashew nut cheese, together with all of the other vegan delights. And overall, it was a lovely, filling meal. The big kids are now old enough to read, and that really enhanced our Seder experience. Still, always good to have some coloring items there and to keep it short. The Tu Bishvat Seder is split into 4 sections, each reflecting the seasons and symbolizing different aspects of the trees in our own lives. Each section is connected to one of the 4 worlds of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, and represents a transition from the most physical to the most spiritual. First cup, the world of Asiyah, actualization. Fruits and nuts with a hard outside and an edible inside. Right, here's my vegan cheese. I'm going to try a piece now.
Looks like real.
Well, the cheddar looks pretty real. I'm going to take some of the cashew blue cheese, put it on here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It's creamy, and it has that tangy flavor of blue cheese. It's obviously not cheese, but it's a nice savory spread, and it does have that creaminess. It's not bad. Not bad. It's pretty decent. It's a kind of cheese. It's kind of cheese-ish. Maybe if you melt it, it would be even better in the grilled cheese sandwich, but it's not terrible. Doesn't have a weird aftertaste. It's pretty good. You know, I'm a cheese snob. I come from a culture that really loves cheese and is very good at making cheese. So I have a high standard for cheese. And I wouldn't say that this cheese was a perfect imitation of dairy-based cheese, but it was something that approximates both the creaminess and the umami feel of cheese. So I had a blue fermented cashew cheese, which had that kind of creamy and tangy flavor, and it was really nice. It was different, but nice. I also have some mozzarella, some shredded mozzarella for pizza. I might make pizza for my family tonight. And I also got some cheddar cheese. And I used some of the cheddar cheese for a grilled cheese sandwich, and it was kind of perfect. It was almost indistinguishable from what I would have had otherwise with dairy cheese, which makes me think, is it worthwhile for me to phase out some of the dairy cheese with cruelty-free plant-based cheese if it makes very little difference to my palate when I go post-vegan? I think that's a good moral question for me to sit with as a non-vegan. So the grilled cheese sandwich was really delicious, and it melted too. It had that melty, yummy goodness. I coated the sides of my sandwich bread in vegan butter, as I would do with normal butter. That didn't seem to make a difference either way. And then I put ketchup and basil and cheese and fried it up in my cast iron skillet, and it was pretty great. The plant-based meats are also really helpful. Hilariously, I got plant-based bacon, which I hilariously now get to, pair with my plant-based cheese. I can have my fake treif being non-kosher food, which is hilarious. All in all, my vegan life got significantly better with these investments, and I look forward to the remainder of the month. Now over to Tu Bishvat. We just had a very mellow, low-key Tu Bishvat family Seder. What I like about Tu Bishvat is that it's not a lot of work. I just put out a spread of fruits and veggies and, my vegan items, and I made a nice curry, butternut squash, coconut soup, and that was it. By Jewish standards, that's actually very little prep. I had printed off 2 Tu Bishvat Haggadah, one from Hazon, which is a sustainability and justice Jewish organization, and one from PJ Library, which was actually made by Neochasid.org. And the latter was much more kid-friendly. It was pretty brief. I was really proud of my kids because they read from it, and we debated some of the questions, and we ate the food, and it was just a light and fun activity. It's also just good to know that not everything needs to be super high maintenance in Jewish ritual and spiritual practice. Sometimes you can just print up some stuff, set out a platter with fruit, and do the thing and have a good time. Now, in conclusion, friends, how have I found this process so far? I have not been entirely consistent. I will say, just like anyone on their kosher keeping journey, I have taken my own advice, and I have stepped away from my vegan practice in certain situations. So one situation was a dear friend of mine had made me a delicious a lacto-ovo vegetarian chocolate cake. I ate the cake. I've also partaken of challah in the synagogue, which has eggs in it, inevitably, because it was appropriate for me to bless and eat the bread with my congregation. There was also one event where we had a special Shabbat service with a special luncheon. Literally everything at the luncheon was not only stuff I love, but it was also egg-based, dairy-based, or fish-based, which I would have eaten without any second thought during any other time of year. But now I did choose to eat that because there was not much for me to eat otherwise, and I wanted to celebrate and be present with my congregation. So those have been the general exceptions, just like I have advised people who are on their kosher keeping journey to pace yourself, to take it easy, and to extend yourself grace. So I've extended myself grace, but inside the home I have been entirely consistent and disciplined about keeping my vegan practice. But I wanted to be transparent with you about that, because ritual systems and ethical systems also need to be flexible and accommodating to individual circumstances, especially when we are still growing in our practice, and I want to model that. So onwards and upwards, I'm actually kind of excited about the second week. I'm excited to not be overly reliant on chickpeas and hummus anymore. I do have some Aqua Faba saved. I'm going to try and make a cake with that and other stuff. I tried making brownies without the Aqua Faba. So Aqua Faba is chickpea juice, essentially, that has egg-like properties in baked items. And my brownies were horrible and they were gross and I had to trash them. That was 2 Shabbatot ago. Here is my Aqua Faba. I did not expect this to work as well as it did, but it did. I chilled it and then followed a very simple recipe using only Aqua Faba and sugar to whip it up in my mixer as you would with egg white. Here it is, all firmed up and ready for piping. I piped a motherload of these things, and here you can see the piping in action. It piped just like any other kind of meringue that you would make with egg whites, and it remained really stable, which surprised me, but it worked out just fine. Then I baked it at a low temperature as per the recipe instructions for about 1.5 hours, and they came out looking crisp and beautifully white. Now you can also use this for pavlova, and you can use this for an eaten mess or anything else, but they are beautiful and whimsical and very easy to make, so that was a really fun little project. I enjoyed them with a cup of tea and my crochet, and I would like to try my hand at the pavlova and other Aqua Faba recipes. But even if I return to eating meat, I will be saving my Aqua Faba. Thank you for joining on this journey. I will keep you posted for the remainder of Vegan Shevat, and I look forward to talking to you all soon. If you like this kind of content, hit the notification bell, like and subscribe to A Small Sanctuary for spiritually engaging, compassionate, real life, real world, home-based Jewish content where we live our Jewish lives with meaning, beauty, and purpose. Join me for the ride, and I'll see you in the next video. Shalom uvracha, with peace and blessings from my bayit to your bayit.